Hello, everyone. This is Nagaraj Nathantala again. I'm here with Andy Rourke from Macys to talk about their journey to Oracle Recruiting Cloud from Taleo. Andy, welcome.
Thank you, Nagaraj. Hello, everyone. Andrew Rourke, Senior Director of HR Technology for Macys. I've had the privilege of working for Macys for a number of years now in a lot of different capacities. I'm currently responsible for HR technology at Macys.
Before we start this conversation, let me provide a little bit of context. My perspective, I know we'll go through a Q&A session here. From my perspective, I came into Oracle from Taleo through the acquisition. Macys was one of the largest customers that we've had. They've tested us like nobody else has done in terms of size and scale. And, handling their peak season was always a welcome opportunity for many of us. And it's both a challenge and an opportunity. And through the transition to Oracle, they've expanded, they've adopted Cloud HCM, and in this conversation, we're going to talk about Andy and Macy's journey as they begin to adopt Oracle Recruiting Cloud. So you're making the move from Taleo to Oracle Recruiting within Cloud HCM. So to provide some context, what roles does your organization hire for, Andy?
There's quite a few. We're a large organization. We're the premier retailer in the United States. So it's everything from professional positions that sit in our corporate offices and our support locations. Predominantly, though, we hire hourly level positions. So that's the 85% of our organization's size is represented by those hourly positions, and they are everything from the folks that you meet when you walk into our store to those that you may speak to when you call into our customer service centers, and also those folks behind the scenes that are making sure that all the packages that you order from Macys.com are packed appropriately, shipped on time, so you have them available to you for the holidays that are coming up or any other event that you might have.
I distinctly remember, the first, when I became part of Taleo, the first season, or your peak season planning that you went through. This is taking us back in time in 2011. The volume of, while I'm familiar with transaction processing, the amount of work Macys does in the 6 to 8 week period is just phenomenal volume. Millions of candidates to the number of the volume of interviews you conduct to the screenings and background screenings and eventual selection and offers, phenomenal volume. So given that, what historically have been the most challenging aspects of your recruiting efforts historically?
I think that the first thing to really touch upon is, that volume and velocity that you just referenced, Nagaraj. At our peak, we'll bring in 10,000 new hires, or we'll make 10,000 job offers in a day. System functionality, reliability, scalability, clearly, because we operate in such a seasonal environment, is critical to us. So, making the right decisions about where we go technologically to support our business. First is volume and velocity, because we need to be able to manage that size and scale and that speed. And, in terms of, opportunities that we've, observed and wanted to make sure that we addressed as we moved into the future, is one cohesive experience. There's some tendencies where you purchase different solutions, but they're leveraging custom integrations, or in some cases not even fully integrated. Getting that clear picture easily can be challenging at times, as the business is trying to evaluate where the opportunities are, where we're good, where we're struggling. And then the other part of it too is that making sure that our candidates, whether they're internal existing colleagues or they're folks that are considering us as a potential employer, that they have an experience that's consistent, that their interactions with our brand, their recruiting experience, their onboarding experience, all of those things should have a level of consistency that's reflective of the brand for our organization. So, those are some of the challenges: is getting a clear lens on the state of the business and the health of it. Um, Trying to keep the overhead and complexity manageable, and then making sure that our colleagues or future colleagues have that consistent experience that's aligned with our brand.
You talked about a variety of experiences along the way, and the focus on both internal and external talent, both prospective talent or prospective employees and current employees. Are there any specific focus areas like candidate experience? You talked about brand experience as well, candidate experience or recruiter efficiency or manager simplicity. Are all of the above focus areas, or you particularly focus on, elements of this?
I think that the first thing to say is we have to acknowledge that there's a different type of candidate experience that can occur from time to time, in terms of what our hourly colleagues may be looking for in a candidate experience versus maybe someone who's applying for a professional role. They're both equally important, both equally nuanced. But I think when we think about what we really wanted to go after, and we talk about candidate experience, we have these opportunities that arise where one of our big focuses was just how do we make sure that our internal colleagues can see and easily apply, like our external candidates, if you will. It may sound peculiar, but it's an opportunity for us to simplify that experience. And what we found in Recruiting Cloud is exactly that, and it has been a huge hit with the organization because of the fact that our internal colleagues now can create those job alerts. They can go out easily once they log into Oracle HCM, which is what we branded as My HR internally. And they can go in there easily and find out what the latest jobs are, what jobs that are opening that are aligned to their interests and skills and qualifications. And I think the other thing too is enterprise consistency. So really focusing on getting a consistent standard of processes and performance, because I think that's what allows us to do the evaluation that we need to at an enterprise level to identify what are the biggest potential wins organizationally, which can be hard sometimes when you have a number of different business solutions and you have a number of different ways that people may choose to go about facilitating the same series of activities, if that makes sense.
It does, and it's great to hear. Some of the design themes that we went, that we thought about as part of the Oracle Recruiting Cloud evolution, being talent aware to target internal talent or make it easy for them to manage their own career aspirations, to elements of what you talked about, unification, unified experiences. Are there other themes that helped drive you or key drivers to move from Taleo to Oracle Recruiting Cloud, to transition to this?
We looked at Oracle Recruiting Cloud, and we had done that internal assessment of ourselves when we put together what we believed was important for the organization to move forward with. And, as I mentioned earlier, that the lion's share of activities in that 85% of our population is hourly. And we wanted something that was future forward, that was in touch with where our candidates wanted us to come out and meet them. So when we think about the ability to make the application experience very lightweight and very straightforward, we've been able to achieve that with Recruiting Cloud. When it comes to having the framework in our career sites to be contemporary and easy to maintain, which is also a value add for us, because with seasonality, with the extent of our marketing footprint, being able to easily stay connected to what we're doing in the market from a retail perspective, but also carrying those brand values over to our career sites and doing that in a cost-effective and simplified approach, that was a big value add for us as well too. The other thing too is, having those hubs of different services that are certified partners of Oracle has been a big win for us. It gives us that sense of confidence in terms of engagement with those vendors to know that they're managing to the standards that Oracle looks for in terms of performance, reliability, and so forth. And it allows us to think a little bit differently about not just what we thought we needed, but really where we can go with things. And I think probably the last thing I would say right now is through the course of configuration and building out our recruiting cloud instance, the other part of it is since we already had an established Oracle HCM footprint inside of Macys, there's that continuity. There's you're building upon a solid foundation. So we're adding this piece to it, which allows us to see things from an end-to-end perspective, which is, as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't something that we had easily at our fingertips.
That's great to hear. You talked about many benefits. You've adopted Cloud HCM, and as you're en route to adopting Oracle Recruiting, you have a view on how and when you'll realize many of the benefits. You talked about many of these. Do you have a perspective about that, when you realize these benefits?
The exciting thing is that some benefits are already paying in now, and our go live in February, which we've done demos now. We're doing a lot of that work up to launch. So we've had a number of our leaders be able to see what we've been doing, and there's just that level of excitement in terms of the return on investment outside of the hearts and minds piece, which is always a big part of it because change can be challenging, is the ability for us to reassess our resources and reassess our business processes. This allows us to, what I like to do, it allows our business to go back and focus on the things that we would consider the core competencies of their role. So we think about, from a data administration perspective, data integrity perspective, the level of effort to complete end-to-end pictures is, even something as straightforward sometimes as trying to identify that moving open jobs target or open positions target. Those are all substantial levels of effort that we're going to see a return immediately on. From a resource perspective, it allows us to think differently about the kinds of work we do. We expect to be able to, see that benefit almost immediately at launch. And really what this does is this actually sets up a value proposition for us over the long term, just because of when we take into consideration everything that we're getting with Recruiting Cloud, plus what we see on the roadmap for Recruiting Cloud, as compared to what other investments may look like out in the marketplace. You take the value that we're getting, you add it to the Oracle HCM whole picture that we're continuing to invest in. The returns are in some ways very tangible from a monetary and resource perspective, and from others, it's really just allowing our business to focus on the things that are business drivers, as opposed to trying to manage symptomatic issues that may emerge over time, if that makes sense.
It does, and I want to go back to one of the things you just touched upon: winning the hearts and minds. Along the way, as you're thinking about adoption of Oracle Recruiting, were any of your users averse to change? What were the challenges that you faced internally, and how did you overcome them?
The first part is, yes, definitely. We have the full spectrum. I think in most situations you have a full spectrum of reactions, from excited, enthusiastic at the outset, to apprehension, on the opposite side, if you will, and or even fear just of change because it's the unknown. What we've done has really just approached it from a very programmatic and logical perspective. we spend a lot of time zooming out. And I think that's been key to it, because I think we can all relate that, sometimes we can get very focused on what's happening on our back porch, what's happening in our backyard, what's happening on our street. Not to say that those things and observations aren't important, but I think if you take a step back and really continue to zoom the lens out, a few things occur. First of all, reprioritization of what you consider to be the most important thing to address typically happens. And then the second thing is that you start to develop a cause and effect, or connect the dots kind of outcome, where you realize that by taking action or moving in a certain way, you're actually taking care of these larger items, which in turn give you either by virtue of cascading down, take care of that thing you were worried about on your back porch, or what it does is it actually, by taking out these larger scale challenges, it allows you to refocus efforts on those smaller items. So either way, it positions you much more effectively to take advantage of your total capacity to go after those types of things. And I think that for anyone who's in a seat right now and they're unclear or unsure about taking those steps and beginning that journey, what I would offer is that if you first zoom out and you really start to look at organizationally, what are the levers that you need to pull to reorient your organization to move more effectively, I think that they would find that this type of solution, this type of cloud-based approach is something that's advantageous.
I'm glad, we have you to sort of champion the cause. And, I know it's not been easy, but, during these times, it's not been easy for many organizations. So I'm glad we're partnered with you to win the hearts and minds of users. That's a very critical piece of the puzzle. Technology is always secondary. You got to win hearts and minds of people internally. So now, since the adoption of Oracle recruiting is not that far away, it's the line of sight for go live is there. If you could go back in time, what would you tell yourself and your teams, and for others in general, as you think of how should you think about transitioning to Oracle recruiting?
I think we did a pretty good job in terms of initial prep and thought process, but there's always opportunities. I think that's, but what I would probably say to anyone who's in that space right now is, it goes back to, again, I think it goes back to zooming out. It's addressing and thinking, let me say it differently, it's thinking and then addressing the things that are really pivotal. And I think that one of the things that you can get slowed down by sometimes is trying to ask the question, can this be done here? Or can it do this? Versus stopping all of that and starting with the question, should we continue to do this? And that's not a reference about what the product can or cannot do. What it is it's really looking at what you're pursuing and looking at it in the confines of how we do business, how we process things, how we work through things today. Is that necessarily appropriate tomorrow? Or is it required? Is it needed? And the reason I say that that's important is if you can set aside the things that you can think differently about, and really focus on the things that are going to be the most important, that allows you to have a much more impactful conversation, not only with your internal partners, but in my humble opinion, with the Oracle partners like I have with you and others. And the reason I think that's so impactful and critical is because, as with all things, it's very easy to get inundated and then inundate your partners with a list of little requests about this, that, and the other. And not to diminish the importance of some of the nuances that you can achieve and the differentiation you may be looking for from where you're sitting with your organization. the bigger message is, you know, you want to focus the conversations on the things that are going to move the needle. So the earlier you can get to clarity on what those things are, the more you can speak with confidence about those things, the more you can be an effective partner with folks like yourself, Nagaraj, and others, and really helping share what your ultimate goals are. And I think it's having those highly, highly effective conversations that are very focused and targeted. And as opposed to coming to the table with a list of all these different things you may want to do or may not want to do or may want to try and not sure if you could. Set those things aside and really think purely strategically and think about what you should be doing in the future, and then bring that conversation to folks like yourself, because that's what's going to move the needle. That's what's going to get the most progress in my mind.
And I remember many of those conversations, Andy. Thank you for bringing that up. So what I'm hearing is take a step back, a couple of steps back, reimagine and transform rather than lift and shift what you've got today, right? That's great advice. I'm sure I didn't ask you everything about your journey. Are there other things you would like to share? Particularly, it's, the earlier phases where you're thinking about, how do I transform? And now you're pretty close to finishing that transformation and getting close to adoption. Are there other things you'd like to share about that?
Very well said. Yes, definitely transformation and not lift and shift. That's a huge point that I would punctuate. Is exactly that. I think that the other thing that I found to be very helpful, which it may sound obvious on its face, but I think it's sometimes important to say those things out loud regardless, which is you when you go down the path, whether whatever choices you may make, this is an investment, and it's a partnership, and I think that's an important piece of the puzzle. And I would encourage everyone who's either considering or in the process or has already done so but is thinking about the next steps, to really evaluate themselves against the definition of a partnership. And the reason I think that's important is because I am the person who works with Oracle, as it relates to my organization. But we all work with Oracle, and Oracle works with us. And my point being that you have to invest in the relationship. You have to take the time to understand how things work in this space, and how you can be most effective, and how you engage with yourself or with others in the Oracle team. And the reason I say that is because you're all working towards the same outcome. You want a successful, you want to have a successful series of products that you can leverage in the organization, just as Oracle is trying to make it a product that all the folks who are in this looking for a solution like this can take advantage of. So it's in your best interest to be transparent. It's in your best interest to balance the conversation, thinking about what can move the needle the most, as opposed to all the things that you may hear about through the course of your day. So I think investment and partnership are first and foremost in my mind. I think the other thing is, the internal team that you build to support Oracle HCM is going to be a contributing factor as well too. You want people who are naturally curious. You want people who are versatile. You want people who are not risk averse, purely because there are things you're going to need to test and learn. There's things you're going to need to get out of your comfort zone. We're doing that constantly, but it's been a rewarding exercise, and it's allowed us to think differently in a lot of ways. So I think, partnership and investment, you've got to live that, you get to breathe that, and you've got to balance, the scales. And then I think the investment you make in the internal team that you bring forth to actually implement Oracle HCM, regardless of what the modules are, I think the recipe still holds. So those would be the few other things I would say. You know, and you know, I think our recipe is proven just by fact of, you know, we're continuing to grow our investment. You know, I've got a highly motivated team. You know, we're anxious for not only go live, but we already got, you know, eyes on some things we want to do in 21 and beyond. You know, with your partnership and others, we've built, you know, quite a foundation within the organization to be successful. So that's what I would say.
Wow, what better way to close this conversation, right? You know, it's all about partnership. And my own recollection over the last 9+ years being in this role, Macy's always had great talent, challenged us, but always as a partner. And that relationship continues. So thank you, Andy, for being a great partner along with Macy's. And, you know, we're here for the long haul in terms of evolving the product along with you. And, you know, nothing but success for you and Macy's. So thank you for this conversation.
I appreciate the opportunity. I'm grateful for the partnership and grateful for all the support and guidance as we've journeyed up to this point, and look forward to future success for everyone involved. So I appreciate it.
Wonderful.